Hey guys, how's it going? Zach Butler YGO here. I just got back from locals like probably 10 minutes ago, and noticed that we'd hit the threshold for a combo video on the Punk deck that I posted a few days ago, so I wanted to show you guys that. Literally, this is the exact same deck list I posted from the video earlier this week. I went undefeated at locals, playing against 3 Kashtira and 1 Scareclaw Kashtira, so that was pretty cool. So we'll just go through a couple of basic hands here and show just kind of how you can play the deck, since there's just so many different variables with each hand and with how you play each thing. We'll walk through it a little differently than before, where I was just kind of explaining stuff as I go and not really talking about why maybe I would consider some options. So that'll be a little bit different, but just like last time, we'll be doing some open hands and we'll see what happens. So we'll cut it in half, and then we will grab our dice, and I will take 4 off the top. So let's see what we get here. So our opening hand has Foxy Tune, Triple Tactics Talent, Emergency Teleport, another Foxy Tune, and a Xiamen. So this is a pretty insane, pretty stellar hand actually. Obviously you have 3 different ways to get to your engine cards, which is really good. So with a hand like this, a couple of things to consider are Infinite Impermanence, Nibiru the Primal Being, and Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring are the big ones. So I would probably want to see if I can do what I like to call like the gut check plays, which is just to see if they have those plays at all. And a couple things to consider too is that you want to get to your Walgon as fast as you can, just to draw as many additional cards as possible. And so we have Emergency Teleport for that, but we also have Xiamen, which can add the Ogre Dance and things like that. So you have a few different options of where to go. I would probably lead with summoning Xiamen and pay 600, see if they respond. If they see that you just had a normal summon this and you didn't have like any extenders or anything like that, good chance that your hand probably isn't that strong. So they're gonna either Ash, Imperm, or Valor this. If they Ash or Valor that, then you have your talents, of course. If they don't, then you know you're probably good to go. So we're gonna grab our Ogre Dance here. And unfortunately with a hand like this, you can't really play around Nibiru too much. You can kind of just force it. So what you can do here is you can activate your Emergency Teleport and grab either your Shirakusai or your Walgon. And so looking at how you want to play it here, if you grab Shirakusai, that means you're going for the Rising Carp line. If you grab Walgon first, Walgon then gets you to the field spell, and you could Ogre Dance, and then Ogre Dance can actually get you Deer Note, and you don't even have to use the Rising Carp at all, meaning it's still in the extra deck for later. One thing to consider with that, though, is that Rising Carp in your graveyard is actually very useful, because on subsequent turns you can use Amazing Dragon to bring it back, and then use it as a synchro material, and then target your Amazing Dragon to be able to double attack or target your Ogre Dance or whatever monster you have. So it does come up where having it in the graveyard is actually really important. The bigger thing here is, are you afraid of them having held their interruption for that? So I would definitely go with Walgon first and pay 600 to add Jam Extreme Sessions. So now we have basically everything we need to really kind of just combo off. So you could Ogre Dance here, and now the decision comes down to Shirakusai and Deer Note actually. So if you Deer Note, you lose out on the Rising Carp play, obviously, but you also lose out on one of the searches that you would get through your field spell. So that's something to consider. because if you grab Deer Note and then I guess you could do it this way and then summon the Deer Note and then use Jam Extreme Session to summon the other tuner, but I'm not a big fan of that line. I really do prefer just going into Shirakushi as much as I can. So then I'd activate this session, banish, and summon Shirakushi, pay 6. And one thing here too is that I would use the Xiamen and not the Wagon, because you want to summon your Rising Carp and have Wagon, because then if they have the Imperm for the Rising Carp, you can actually draw another card. So it could just give you additional cards. So then I would still wait to draw any cards off of my Extreme Session here, because we're going to activate Rising Carp, and we're going to summon our Madame Spider and our Deer Note here. So if they're going to Nibiru you, here's probably where they'll do it. If they Nibiru you, then you can at least get back your Madame Spider and search for the trap card, get one draw card, or one draw off of that and see if maybe that helps you, and then you have your Talents and your Foxy Tune as well. So you still have lines, they're just not very good compared to like what you could have been doing, but let's just assume we live in a perfect world where none of that happens. Activate your Madame Spider, and you add your Dangerous Gabu to hands. And now we're going to cut and take 5 off the top because we're going to draw a card. Now we'll trigger our Jam Session for the first time to draw a card, and we draw another Xiamen, which is totally fine because it's really just like a bonus card. So then we Synchro Summon here into our Jam Dragon Drive. And now we'll use Jam Dragon Drive as Chainlink 1, Deer Note is Chainlink 2, and you can either target your Shirakushi if you want to have a play on your opponent's turn, or you could target something else and make a IP Masquerena, whatever you feel like is more beneficial. But Jam Dragon Drive is going to grab us our Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. So we now guaranteed have 2 defensive cards, as well as a Shirakushi play potentially, or a IP Masquerena into Unicorn play. And then off of our draw off of the Jam Extreme Session, we draw Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. So that's pretty good. Actually, no, we didn't draw that because I didn't mill. So we do 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's see, we draw Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Okay, so we drew Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring regardless. That's pretty funny. So off of that initial hand, and we still haven't used our Foxy Tune either. So that's actually something that's really cool, is that you could, in theory, if you wanted, use Foxy Tune to go discard like itself and Xiamen and grab another Xiamen and then link into IP. But just off of this so far, we have these 4 cards in field, as well as these 7 in hand, and 3 of which are defensive cards. So then you could go Foxy Tune, discard itself in Xiamen. If you really want to extend further, and you can grab your second Shirakushi. And then we will go ahead and do this. And it does actually matter because in this example, we're going to end up using the effect. So then we can Synchro Summon, or not Synchro, we can Link Summon into IP Masquerena. And so off of that opening hand, you have your Jam Extreme Session, your Shirakushi, which can work with your Jam Dragon Drive, your IP Masquerena, your Jaruri Punk Dangerous Gabu, your Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. So you still have 5 cards in hand, 4 on field, and on their turn, you'll have the Dangerous Gabu face down, so that'll negate a monster effect and you'll gain life points. You have Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit to get rid of a threat. You have Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring to stop them from searching. Then you can Synchro Summon these 2 into Amazing Dragon. And Amazing Dragon can return, let's see how many different names we have here. Not 2 Shirakushi, that'd be crazy. A minimum of 4, a maximum of 5 potentially. Not that you're like ever going to need to return 5 cards. But then on top of that, you also have the Jam Extreme Session, which lets you draw another card. And if they chain to any of that, you can get back your Jam Dragon Drive again and pay another 600, search for another card, and then you still have the IP play as well. But so you at least can do this, bounce a bunch of cards, make Unicorn, shuffle back another card. You have a negation, you have a search stopper, as well as a destruction card. And that's just off of that opening hand that we saw. So we'll do a couple more hands here, because that's one of the things I like about this deck, is just how much you actually can just kind of free flow and see how you want to approach each hand. So let's try again. And like I said, this is actually the exact deck list I played tonight. I played against 3 pure Kashtira and 1 Kashtira Scareclaw. Going first and going second, this deck was excellent into all of those into those matchups, which was great. So if you're a big fan of the Punk cards, I really would recommend giving this a try. It's a lot of fun. It's really basic, and that's actually one of the reasons why it's so good, is because it's so straightforward in theory, like in the baseline, that you're able to play out your turns however you feel like is best. So we draw into our Dangerous Gabu, which is obviously not a good draw. Ash Blossom, Joyous Spring, Emergency Teleports, now our hand is live, Shirakusai, and Call by the Grave. So this actually reminds me that earlier I should have actually won my match against my second or third Kashtira match. My second one's 2-0. I just didn't use Call by the Grave on Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, very foolishly. So here you could Emergency Teleport for your Wagon, and you could either do Wagon and search out the field spell, or you could do the Amen. Assuming that either one of these 2 monsters gets summoned, that means that they don't have Ash Blossom. So then it depends on if you want to play around Imperm or not. Because if you're trying to play and respect Imperm, summoning Wagon is correct, because if they Imperm, you'll draw a card. If you're not worried about the Imperm because you have the Shirakusai, you're just going to summon the Xiamen and then activate its effect and force them to use it if they have it. Either way, you're going to force out the Imperm or Veiler. I'd probably go Wagon first, because I want to get those draws as soon as possible with this kind of a weak hand. So we get Jam Extreme Session, and then we can go, and actually you could do it a totally different way. Is that even worth it? I'm just realizing you could, instead of going Wagon, you could just search Xiamen and then Xiamen summon, or pay 600 to search the Wagon, grab the Jam Extreme Set, or you discard you use, let me show you the other way that I was thinking actually. So you could summon Xiamen, grab Ogre Dance, grab Wagon, grab the field spell, and then you summon the Shirakusai. The issue here is that you're playing really hard into Nibiru, so I think it makes more sense to go Wagon this way. And then activate your field spell, normal summon your Shirakusai, pay 600, infuse into your Rising Carp. And also, if you're wondering kind of like where the biggest choke points in the deck are, Rising Carp is 100% the biggest choke point in the entire deck. This is, if you're trying to figure out how to beat the Punk deck, this is what you want to stop. This is the card that leads to the most lines, the most variance in the combos. So if you can, if you feel like you can successfully Ash or Imperm this, or even Veiler, like before they activate its effect, this is where you would lock them. So then we draw Imperm off of our field spell. And the reason why we're doing that is because my hand is already pretty weak. I need to see as many live cards and as many defensive cards as early as I can to try to put together a play. So we summon these 2 off of the Rising Carp. And now we'll activate our Xiamen, and I think off of Xiamen, I would just grab Foxy Tune, just to ensure that next turn I have a play that can force out interaction. Which will then trigger, do I want to trigger the Extreme Session? So here you have to consider, if you trigger your Extreme Jam Session here, you risk drawing into your Ogre or whatever. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. So yeah, I think I'd use it here. Because if I draw the Ogre, then that means I get to search out a different name. If I don't draw it, then cool, I get to draw the ogre. So we draw into Nibiru. So we draw into even more defensive cards. And we Synchro Summon into our Jam Dragon Drive. We'll summon back the Shirakusai off of the Deer Notes. And Jam Dragon Drive will grab us Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit again. So this is another example of a hand that was, actually this hand was very weak. But what's really cool about this hand in particular is it really showcases one of the things I like about this deck, is that this is like a hand trap deck. Because you have these 3 defensive cards, you have 3 hand traps, you have the Shirakusai, which will then get to the Amazing Dragon, which then draws you into an Ogre Dance, so you have follow-up on the next turn. So you have 7 layers of interruption off of that opening hand that seemed really weak at first, but you were able to mitigate that and utilize the fact that your engine is very compact and very efficient, because it's a bunch of 1 and 2 card combos. Let's do one more hand. Maybe two. I really enjoy talking about the Punk deck. So this is, for me, this is just a lot of fun. If you guys are enjoying this conversation, this type of video, please let me know down in the comment section below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as well, please. That helps out a ton. And if you are a Punk enthusiast and you want to pick up any of the cards you've seen me using so far in this video or in the deck profile of the pure Punk deck that I played, or that I played tonight and I profiled earlier in this week, please use the affiliate link in the description below. It costs you nothing extra and helps me out while you're helping yourselves out getting all these awesome cards. So we'll do one of our last 2 hands here. We draw Emergency Teleport, already a great hand. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, okay, so we've got a good defensive card. Triple Tactics Talent, again, great when you have these 2 in hand, that's awesome. Z-Amin, again, even better, where this hand is looking really good. And Kashtira of Fenrir, oh, perfect, okay. So this is actually really cool, because drawing Fenrir kind of changes the lines. So you'll go stay on my main. One of the things that I keep in mind when I play this deck a lot is if I draw these 2 together, I'm using my teleport in the main phase just to try to force out an Ash Blossom. So we summon our Fenrir, and we'll activate its effect, and we will add another Fenrir. One question I've gotten is, what do you do if you can't afford Fenrir? You could play Ascendant of Thunder, which, while not as good as Fenrir, obviously, is actually a really cool level 7 that I've considered playing alongside Fenrir. It leans harder into your Psychic End Punisher plays because it reduces your life points by an additional 2,000, but it's another level 7. And it's a light, so if you're playing Small World that comes up, you can play Instant Contact if you don't mind changing the extra deck. You can even play Tenyi Spirit Vishuddha, which is something one of my close friends, Nick, suggested actually, was that you can play a Tenyi package, but I just like just Vishuddha by itself because with the Nibiru token running around, and if you play a Monk of the Tenyi, it's removal, so that's something else to consider too. But so we have this as our hand. We would then probably go normal summon our Z-Amin, pay 600, and let's see what we would want to search here. I think because we already have Baronne de Fleur, I'd want to grab Shirakusai. No, we're going to grab Ogre Dance because I want to make sure I have a card to discard, or a card to banish. So now we will Synchro Summon into Baronne de Fleur. I think it's the first time we've done this in this entire video. And we will activate our Emergency Teleport. And Teleport will summon Wagon, and Wagon will pay 600 more to add Jam Extreme Session. So we are pretty much off to the races here. We're going to activate our Ogre Dance, and Ogre Dance will grab us a copy of Shirakusai. So now you've got everything you need to go through the motions of the combos that we've seen before. So you activate your Jam Extreme Session. You can activate Jam Extreme Session by banishing Ogre Dance to special summon Shirakusai. Activate its effect to pay 600. And you will fusion summon Rising Carp. Here, because your hand is already live and you know that you have protection, I wouldn't actually use the draw effect, but I would attribute this to summon the Deer Note, as well as the Madame Spider, Madame Spider will then activate to add you Dangerous Gabu, giving you now 2 guaranteed defensive cards. Plus, let's see what we draw here in a second. We're probably going to draw something pretty good, because the deck is just chock full of powerful cards at this point. So we're going to do 10, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we draw into Nibiru the Primal Being. So not very great, given that we're going to have a field setup, but if they manage to break your field, then you have another defensive card, which is always good. So we Synchro Summon into our Punk Jam Dragon Drive. And we will have Jam Dragon Drive be link 1, Deer Note be link 2. We'll target Shirakushi to bring it back. And we will search for our Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. And then we will get an additional draw off of the Jam Extreme session here in just a moment, which is pretty great. 9, and we draw into another Deer Note. So here we have Baronne de Fleur. So if they force the negate, let's just say hypothetically they try to Nibiru. You have the Baron negated already used. So then you can set your Dangerous Gabu so that you have 6 cards in hand and this on the field. If they force the Baron negate on their turn, you would use Baron and actually tag it out for your Kashtira Fenrir. In this case, you could also tag it out for Logon if you wanted. If you can't play Fenrir, you can actually tag it out for Deer Note and make another Jam Dragon Drive on their turn, which is really cool. Because then you can get you can pay 600 to make it, and then draw a card, and then pay 600 to search and draw another card. So that's really cool. But so you would bring that back, and then you would have the Amazing Dragon play, Dangerous Gabu, the Fenrir Interruption, the draw off of this, which gets you to another Jam Dragon or Jam Extreme session, stuff like that. You have all your hand traps and stuff too. So let me do one more hand, just because I can't remember if I said this was gonna be my last one. And then I'll go over just a couple of quick tips to keep in mind when you're playing the Punk deck. Because I know that this deck has a lot of cards that people think they understand, and there's a lot of like really nuanced stuff that people don't know. So we're gonna do 10 off the top, 9, 10. All right, let's see what we get. Last hand, we draw Dangerous Gabu, so we've drawn a Garnet. Deer Note, not too great. Triple Tactics Talent, still not great. Kashtira Fenrir, okay, we're making it. And Foxy Tune. This hand went from awful to incredible. So we can summon our Kashtira Fenrir and activate its effect to add another Fenrir. Remember, if they Ash, Imperm, Veiler, anything here, that's perfect. Especially if they Ash or Veiler, because then you have the Triple Tactics Talent. But if they Imperm or anything like that, thinking like, you know, you're playing pure Kashtira, because all you've done so far is summon a Fenrir, you haven't actually given any indication of anything. And they might be trying to stop your initial push. You still have the Foxy Tune to back it up. So you can activate Foxy Tune and discard your second Fenrir to summon the Xiamen, because you haven't normal summoned yet. So then you'll pay 600 for Xiamen, and you'll add Wogon. Now we will Synchro Summon into Baronne de Fleur, which, awesome, thanks to Amazing Memories, is a lot. I mean, it's still really expensive, but it's a lot more accessible than the $130 ultra rare. At least now it's like $60, so it's half the price. But it's a nice. It's nice that it's getting easier to get. It's still pretty expensive though. We summon Wogon and we use its effect to pay another 600 to get to our Jam Extreme session. So here we can't go into the Shirakushi line, which is unfortunate, but it is okay. We are still able to do... Well, I mean, we could actually... You could Shirakushi, actually, instead of going Wogon. Instead of searching Wogon with the Xiamen, what you could do is you could grab Shirakushi, and then you use, this is searched off the Wogon, so you use the Shirakushi effect, and you fuse itself and the Deer Note from your hand, because it can use them from the field or hand. It can also just use 2 different punks that aren't itself. Summon Rising Carp, and now you use your Rising Carp to summon out your Deer Note and your Wagon, which then gets you to Jam Extreme Session. So you've actually still gotten to your full breadth of plays. And that's one of the things I mean, is like there's just so many things to consider when you're playing this deck. There's so many little intricacies. Right there, initially I thought going Wagon was correct, and I realized that I could just instead do the Shirakusai line and actually open up to be able to do Amazing Dragon on their turn. So it was even better. So then, before you Synchro Summon, you would obviously activate your field spell. And now you Synchro Summon into your Jam Dragon Drive. Chainlink 1, Jam Dragon Drive. Chainlink 2, Deer Note. We'll be targeting your Shirakusai to bring it back. And we will be adding a copy of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. So the reason we're not adding Madame Spider here is because we already have the Dangerous Gabu, so it doesn't actually serve much of a purpose in our hand at the moment. You could, in theory, add it, and you could in theory add that, and you could then just special summon it, or you could add the Shirakusai and summon back your Wagon. Actually, that's another option. So let me go over that really quick. This was in the graveyard. So this is what I mean by, like, there's just so many variables to consider. So these are your 3 search targets. If you want another just good defensive card, you would search for your Snow Rabbit, and off of the Deer Note, you would summon back the Shirakusai. If you wanted to summon back the Wagon, which has attacking and targeting protection, you could add the Shirakusai, and you'd still get your draw. Or you could add the Madame Spider just to special summon this, and then you can banish and special summon the Madame Spider and make it like an Amazing Dragon, and go from there. I think I would probably special summon back the Shirakusai and grab the Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, though, just because I want to keep as many resources in my deck as possible to draw off of with the Jam Extreme sessions, but also just as many resources as possible to have on subsequent turns. So we'll do 12 more. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. And we draw into a Ogre Dance. So that's actually really good here, because we haven't used our Jam Extreme session to special summon. So you could special summon Ogre Dance, and you could overlay these 2 into Felgrand if you wanted. You could Synchro Summon into Amazing Dragon, and then bring this back and have the ability to have Amazing Dragon ×2 on their field. That does sometimes come up where, like, let's say you banish and you special summon, and then you Synchro for... Actually, you'll specifically want to Synchro the Jam Dragon Drive, and you'll Synchro into Amazing Dragon. And then you use Amazing Dragon's effect to bring back your Shirakusai that you just used as a material. The reason why you would want the Jam Dragon Drive in the graveyard for this is because on their turn, if you activate Shirakusai and they have any interruption, then the Jam Dragon Drive is in graveyard when this is activated, so it can special summon itself back and get you... So you'll draw off of this already, but then this can search for another card, and you'll draw an additional card as well. So that's just something to consider when you're doing these kinds of lines. Doing it this, like going this heavy into a play is really risky into like Nibiru, but if you haven't used your Baron, of course, you can always just kind of freeform it and kind of play with impunity. So a couple things that I wanted to highlight for some of the newer players maybe who don't know the Punk cards as well is Jam Dragon Drive. One thing about this is that if it's in the graveyard, if your opponent responds to a Punk card or effect, it can special summon itself back, and it can search off of that. It searches when it's special summoned by Synchro Summon or by the effect of a Punk card. So if you bring it back off of the Amazing Dragon, it can search. If you bring it back off of a Deer Note, things like that. That's just really important to note, but it has to be in the graveyard when they would respond to the effect. Rising Carp actually has a second effect that comes up a lot for the OTKs, where when it's used as a synchro material, you can then target a punk monster you control, and then it can make 2 attacks during that battle phase. That's a really important little interaction, and that's actually how you win a lot of your games, is on turn 1, you'll use its effect, tribute it, then make like your Jam Dragon Drive, and you do all your other stuff. But then, you make your Amazing Dragon, and then on your next turn, you bring back the Rising Carp with Amazing Dragon, and you Synchro Summon into Psychic and Punisher. And then you have your Amazing Dragon out, and then since this was used as a synchro material, it can target the Amazing Dragon, and the Amazing Dragon can attack twice. One way to know if your combo on turn 1 has been done, like, quote-unquote correctly, is that you should usually be at 5,000 life points. If, assuming, like, you didn't dead draw any of, like the Madame Spider, the search target for that or anything, you will have paid 5 times, so that'll give you a 3,000 life point difference, which is really hard for people to answer the Psychic End Punisher. Also, a lot of the times on Psychic End Punisher, you can just do Psychic End Punisher pass, but if you do that, make sure you don't pump its attack on their battle phase, because a lot of the times what'll happen is it'll go to 65, they'll swing, they'll take that damage, and now your life points are higher, so then this card can be affected by their card effects. So that's just something to consider in the extra deck as well. I think those were the biggest extra deck things I wanted to note. For the main deck, I wanted to actually just mention, so when Z-Amin goes to graveyard, you can target a punk monster you control and it gains 600 attack. That attack boost is permanent. So a lot of the times you can actually use this to prevent your opponent from being able to respond to like your Deer Note or your Jam Dragon Drive and things like that. When you use it as a synchro material, you use those effects as Chain Link 1 and 2, and then you use this as Chain Link 3, and this is the one that they have to respond to. That's really important. One thing both of the big punks share is that you contribute one of the other punk monsters to special summon these from hand. Ogre Dance has an effect that when your opponent activates a monster effect, it gains attack. And Foxy Tune can gain life points. It's just something to keep in mind. I know I went over all of this in my punk primer for Master Duel, but I just wanted to mention this for those who maybe don't really pay attention to Master Duel content. Madame Spider has an effect that when you use a card or effect that a punk card or effect that targets a card your opponent controls, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, and its attack becomes halved until the end of the turn. So that can help with Psychic End Punisher swings. And then Shirakusai, as both effects are very well known. Then Deer Note, actually, one really cool thing is everybody knows that Deer Note can bring back a monster. You can't summon Deer Note again for the rest of the turn, but it doesn't prevent you from using another Deer Note effect to summon from your hand. So let's say you drew one Deer Note and you used a Deer Note engrave. If you drew the Deer Note and you have like Foxy Tune and Deer Note, you can reveal these two and then summon the other punk. And that can sometimes be really important. And then one of the most important ones is Wagon. If your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a punk monster you control, or when your opponent targets one for an attack, you can draw a card. So a lot of the times you'll summon this, activate its effect, and if they imperm it, you just get a free draw anyway. And if you happen to have Jam Extreme Session out, then you just drew 2 off of paying 600 life points. So you literally went pay 600 life points, discard a card, draw 2. So you went +3 or +2. Is that +2? You just went +1 billion. I don't remember. Math is not working for me right now. But you just plus really hard off of just paying 600 life points. The last thing is that Jam Extreme Session actually is really important in that the special summon from hand effect is not a hard once per turn. It's once per turn per copy. The drawing twice per turn effect is a general effect that can only be applied twice per turn. But if you draw a Jam Extreme Session and then you search out another one, you can summon off the first one, replace it with the second one, and then summon off of the second copy as well. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're like trying to force through plays and stuff like that. Like I said, that's just a lot of information, and I really hope this all helps you guys. I've had a ton of fun making this video and going through these hands with you guys. let me know down in the comment section below if you want me to do this again. I would love to do it. And until next